to the original file that we looked at, and of course the issue of species. Species, of course, make a very, very important part of ecology, or the ecology of a place. And incidentally, we just can't lump species together. These species are different. They play different roles. And they have to be considered because of the roles that they play in any particular ecosystem. We've got the indicator species that tell us about the status of other species and key habitats or the impacts of a stressor. For indicator species, they will tell you exactly how an ecosystem is doing. Either the absence of an indicator species or the presence of an indicator species will give you an idea of what is happening, either what is happening to the other species. For example, if it's a species down there in the food chain, and then you realize that over time, so it's a species, it's down in the food chain, that means other species predate on it. So if you realize that over time, the population of this species is increasing, that tells you that the predators are less. So there are less threats for these species, so they have continued to increase in number. That being so, then you have to check, why are the predators less? What's happening to the predators? So, or maybe if it's a proliferation of a certain species, or you start finding a particular species in an area that you were not finding there before, you have to think, why is this species moving towards this direction? Is maybe the water temperature is now more favorable to it? If it's the temperature which was a limitation, is it the salinity? Or why is this species that was originally not here just finding this environment even more comfortable? So let's look at this, let's watch this video also. I just go through each video for each of the species, and I'm thinking that will make it easier for you to remember. Because as I said before, I think this is important. This will form the backbone of whatever it is that you're going to be doing in ecology. So it's just a short video. An indicator species will give you information about the health of the environment where they exist, or maybe the presence, what is happening with other species. Yeah, so there we have it of indicator species. I don't think I need to repeat anything, and you've seen some of these indicator species, they're not just animals, they can be plants, they can be lichens, they can be moss, they can be fish, they can be animals, whatever it is, they can be, and this will tell you exactly what is happening. They'll tell you what is happening in the environment. Now let's look at keystone species. Keystone species have greater effects. Keystone species, sorry. Keystone species have greater effects on ecological processes than would be predicted from the abundance of biomass alone. So when it comes to keystone species, it's very difficult. Just a minute. Just a minute. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so where are we? Yeah, we're saying that for keystone species, they have greater effects on ecological processes than would be predicted just from their abundance of biomass alone. So let's also look at this. So can you see? Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, can you see my screen?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay.
The original stone refers to a wedge-shaped slab at the peak of a stone arc. If you remove the keystone, you risk the whole thing falling down. And some ecosystems work the same way, relying on one keystone species. In biology, keystone species have a disproportionately large impact on their habitat, given their size or numbers. Their daily activities affect all kinds of other species, directly or indirectly. And a change in their numbers can cause a trophic cascade, where effects ripple through the ecosystem, often in surprising ways. Take the gray wolves of Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. Their numbers dropped to 0 around the early 1930s, mostly because of hunting. But in 1995, wolves were reintroduced to the park, and the wolves' impact has been monitored ever since. Turns out that impact is seriously important. The wolves' absence and reintroduction changed Yellowstone in large and often surprising ways, right down to how the rivers flow. For one thing, wolves prey on elk, and the elk know it, so their behavior changes when wolves are in the area. Elk are generally nomadic, staying on the move as they munch on plants. But without any wolves around, the elk became much less cautious, preferring to settle down and eat a lot in one place at a time. The elk even ate all the way down to the riverbank, somewhere they wouldn't dare linger if there were wolves around. Instead of eating a little bit from a lot of different plants, they ate so much at a time that aspen and cottonwood trees declined, and so did the the riverside willows that beavers and some songbirds depend on. And beavers are also keystone species because of their special engineering talents. Their dams slow the flow of rivers, preventing floods and offering a wide range of habitats for all kinds of species. Ever since wolves were reintroduced to Yellowstone, willows have grown better, beaver colonies have increased from just 1 to 9, and songbirds are flourishing too. Elk numbers declined at first, but now seem to have stabilized. And bison numbers are up, probably because of decreased competition from the elk. Research is ongoing to assess the wolves' long-term impact, considering the many subtle interconnections in this complex ecosystem. But predators, it's clear that the presence, absence, and then reintroduction of wolves has resonated throughout Yellowstone. And research into other wolf habitats will help work out what's unique to Yellowstone and what can be applied elsewhere. Elephants also do a lot to manage their environment, from what goes on in their mouths to what comes out the other end. They're sometimes known as for example, without African forest elephants, a single species of acacia tree tends to dominate African forests. It grows fast and shuts out the light from others. The elephants help counter that. They sometimes knock down acacia in their search for food, opening up space and a critical shaft for light. Other plant species seize their chance, adding to the forest's biodiversity. They provide hidey holes for lizards, which are more diverse in places where elephants roam. When reaching for leaves or fruit, they'll often knock off a bunch more, and these windfalls get picked up by smaller ground dwellers like warthogs, as well as the kudu, which is a type of antelope. All this eating results in plenty of dung, around a metric ton every week. And all that poop becomes a mini ecosystem all by itself, since it's rich in nutrients that the elephants couldn't process. Fungi live in it, as do insects like beetle larvae, crickets, and spiders. In 2009, 3 species of frogs were found happily living in Asian elephant dung. And of course, excellent fertilizer. Many plant species grow better in elephant dung from any other animal. Their wide roaming and variation in movement make them especially good at spreading seeds to new places. But you don't have to be as big as an elephant to have a jumbo-sized impact on your ecosystem. Parrotfish are named for their tough, almost beak-like mouth parts. These hardened lips are well adapted for plucking algae off coral, their main food source in their warm reef environment. It might not be glamorous, but it turns out to be vital to keeping the reef healthy. Without parrotfish, macroalgae can smother the coral to the point of killing it off. And no coral means no reef, which would be big trouble for these species that call coral reefs home. A major report decades of research in the Caribbean identified parrotfish as a group to keep a special eye on. Coral reefs are generally having a tough time of it, with climate change, ocean acidification, and pollution steadily degrading the ecosystem. The parrotfish's maintenance work helps keep reefs resilient so that they can recover from blows like sudden heating or a hurricane. Caribbean reefs, where the parrotfish are heavily fished, are suffering the most. So the report recommends more countries adopt policies to save the parrotfish, and hopefully save the reefs along with it. So like all keystone species, they really hold their ecosystems together. Thanks for watching this episode of SciShow, which was brought to you by our patrons on Patreon. If you want to help support this show, go to patreon.com/scishow, and don't forget to go to youtube.com.
I think that makes keystone species so clear in your mind now. I don't think if you're looking at the ecosystems, the marine ecosystems, you've got the parrotfish that keeps help eat up the algae from the ecosystem services. We've also seen the elephant in the terrestrial system, and yeah, so many other animals that are doing a lot to try and whatever. And also the wolf. That story about the wolf is especially interesting just because of the way, just the fact that a wolf is there, it affects the behavior of the primary the primary consumers, and that's the elk. And that was a very interesting bit where when the elk know that there are no wolves, they can relax. They don't have to move a lot. They tend to eat so much from maybe one species, and they end up causing an imbalance in the whole ecology of the place. And wow, see what happens when the wolves are back, things get back to normal. Yeah, and the ecosystem is balanced. That is just amazing. And it shows the effect of hunting of the wolf had on the entire park. Yeah, the next one is the ecological engineer. And you've got the gopher tortoise and also the beaver. The next video we're going to look at is on the beaver. And what these animals do, they just alter the habitat. And once they alter the habitat, they modify the fates of other species. So they do something for themselves, but they are also affecting the fate of other species. But one thing I like about animals, whatever it is they do, it ends up in most cases being beneficial than destructive. We let them. The elephants. There's a time I went to the Shimba. We were it's quite some time back. We were doing some census for the colobus monkey. And yeah, and so we had to go through the forest and do transects and that kind of thing. We were with the rangers, of course they were armed. And you just go through land where the elephants have, oh, this is very destructive. Keeping the balance in the ecology. Once some trees fell, they become food for others, they become habitat for others, but it also opens up the ground so that other plants can also grow. So for me, I think that was, what I would have considered as a human being as destructive behavior. This is what we are trying to save. We are trying to make sure we have as many trees as possible, and elephants are busy just pulling down all these trees and just later getting to know actually whatever they are doing is very, very important and it should be applauded. Let's look at the next video on the ecological engineers.
Click here to make your very own Monster Unadapted Mind, where monsters teach you math. Oh my, that monster...
Beavers bring life to rivers and the land. They re-engineer the landscape to create safe habitats for themselves where they can hide from predators and swim to where their food grows. Beavers feed on bark and leaves in the late autumn or winter, then switch to softer wetland plants in the spring and summer. Life is easy for the beavers that live on big rivers, but when the best habitats are fully occupied, young beavers are forced away from them through vicious territorial disputes and must make their homes along the narrow tributaries. Here they're more vulnerable to predators, so millions of years ago, to avoid the big cats that preyed on them, they learned to build dams. In doing so, they radically change the habitats in which they live. Using stones, branches and mud with astonishing ingenuity, they construct first one and then a series of small dams. Wherever they find a leak, they stop it up. Before long, even small seasonal streams start to look like mountain rice paddies dammed up with wood, a series of stepped pools surrounded by wetlands. These are phenomenally rich habitats that abound with life, harboring an abundance of insects, great concentrations of frogs, small mammals, and water birds. Beaver dams also regulate floods and droughts, cleanse the water of sediments, filter out poisons, and recharge groundwater. North American tribes revered the beaver, They knew that the wetlands beavers create are the Earth's kidneys, purifying water and regulating its flow. They noticed that beavers are highly social creatures who live in their lodges built of sticks in tight family groups. They saw that the adults go to great lengths to care for their offspring. Aunts and uncles from earlier litters look after the youngest kits. They carry them away from danger, clasped to their chests with their front paws. They warn them of aquatic predators by slapping their tails on the water. They bring green food to the kits when they're too small to leave the lodge. They cuddle them and call gently to them. For these reasons, Native Americans call them the little people. 1600s, the Europeans came. For them, beavers represented something quite different: commercial value. Europe's beavers, that once numbered in the tens of millions, had been almost eliminated because of the value of their glands. Beavers' scent glands contain castoreum, a compound that's rich in salicylic acid from the willow bark the animals eat. This is a powerful painkiller. The combination of this valuable compound, the beaver's fine fur and tasty meat, ensured that one animal was worth as much as an entire year's earnings for a medieval peasant. While castoreum from American beavers was less valuable, as they ate more cottonwood than willow, their soft, thick pelts put a high price on their backs. Demand was insane. In particular, people wanted their fur for hats. Beaver hats made from felted underfur were waterproof and durable. Trappers fanned out across the New World, scouring its wetlands for valuable pelts. By the time the geographers, map makers, photographers, and settlers arrived in their footsteps, the beavers were long gone. As the beavers disappeared, the water went with them. Rich ecosystems, especially in the southern states, dried up and vanished. Hunting grounds and fisheries collapsed. Fires, shriveled vegetation around the dried out creeks. The rangelands downstream turned brown. Cattle jostled to drink from the last of the old beaver ponds. Eradicating beavers was a terrible mistake, causing harm that cascaded through our living system. But back the little people to the depleted lands of Europe and North America, we can restore recharge our groundwater, stop floods and droughts, and witness once more the abundance of wildlife that accompanies beavers wherever they make their homes.
Wow. Yeah, I think I love that video the most. And yeah, it puts a lot in our minds to think about. And yeah, and once we look back now, we almost can tell what may have gone wrong for us to get to where we are today. But that should also serve as a warning for us to be careful, lest what we do today will be derided upon by the future generations and ask, what on earth are these people doing? What are they not thinking? Okay. Because as I said, we most of the times we do something And of course, follow later, and we can see, like for the beaver, when people went out there hunting these little animals, and just almost clearly wiped them out. These ecological engineers do. How many other animals depend on it? How much of biodiversity, even aesthetic value of a place, that depends on these little things. Yeah, and the activities that they're doing, the changes they're making. And that is what I was saying, what I like about animals. Whatever it is they do in most cases, especially when nature is balanced, they do it for the good of the other animals. But when man comes in, if you listen to this story, it's when the Europeans came in, the Native Americans live in harmony with the beavers. Had them just because they realized the value of these animals. I don't even know, I think they even used to eat them, but when the Europeans came, the game changed, and they just sort of totally wiped out these little things. And of course, the consequences definitely came. We can only say that was nature revenging. And somebody said that revenge is a dish best served cold. So nature is eating at us in so many different ways. And yeah, I think it is time that as human beings, as students, acknowledge that once we finish and once we go out there, we will be the ambassadors for sustainable development, for sustainable land use. We are not the ones who are going to be caught overfishing or over degrading the ecosystems. And yet we are armed with the knowledge. We know that what we are doing right now, it may bring us profits. We may be very what we tell you, it's going to hit back at us. You may not be there to experience the consequences, but your children are going to be there to experience the consequences. So nowadays, I'm very interested to know, how is the knowledge that you're taking, how is it transforming you as a person? Okay, when we say that, when we come to class and we are saying littering is bad, throwing away rubbish, throwing rubbish is bad, and yet we are the first people to throw things through the car window, through the bus window, water bottles and whatever. It doesn't bother, it doesn't hurt our conscience that, come on, I am doing the very things that we are learning and saying these things are unsustainable. Okay, so I believe in transformative learning. As I learn, not only is it getting to my head, it is also changing my behavior. For me, that's the most effective kind of learning, and that's the only learning that is going to help this country at whatever level you'll be operating. Let's look at umbrella species. These species either have overlap the habitat requirements of so many other species. So let's look at this video, and there's something that you're going to realize even as we continue, is that some animals actually can be more than just one species. Let's watch this video. I don't think it is not.
Both keystone species and umbrella species have some similarities as well as differences. Let's take a look at the difference of keystone species and umbrella species in this video. So who first coined the concept or the term of keystone species? It was Robert T. Payne, an American ecologist. He first coined this term. The term umbrella species was coined by Wilcox in the year 1984. Let's take a look at their definition. Keystone species is a species that plays an unique role in the way ecosystem functions. The activity of keystone species determine community structure in that ecosystem. Umbrella species are the species whose conservation protects numerous co-occurring species in that ecosystem. Now let's take a look at the geographical area that these two different types of species occupy. Well, keystone species are usually non-migratory and influence one particular environment or habitat, while umbrella species are usually having large occupancy area or home range, and they're migratory in nature. They influence different habitats. Let's take a look at their influence on food web. Keystone species usually have a huge influence on food webs, while as umbrella species do not possess huge influence on food webs. Let's take a look at their habitat needs. Keystone species usually do not require large habitats. However, umbrella species usually need large habitats. Let's take a look at their size. Well, keystone species may vary in size, whereas umbrella species is usually very large in size. Let's take a look at their examples. Well, beavers, sea otters, African elephants, fig trees, these are examples of keystone species. Whereas Amur tiger, grizzly bear, these are examples of umbrella species. Thanks for visiting BioGalaxy Online. Don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel. Thanks again.
Okay, so that was simply telling us about the differences between the keystone and the umbrella species, so that we don't get confused. Then we have the last one, the link species. These species, the link species, they have critical roles in the transfer of matter and energy across trophic levels and across food webs. And if they are missing, then there's trouble. One is missing, especially on the lower levels, then it is going to affect all the way up. You can imagine if there were no herbivores in the Mara, what would happen to all? Yeah. So that's all you need to remember, that it is important to look at this and put in mind that all these species interact. And remember, I'm not just when you look at all these species, at times we are like indicator species. We may think we're just talking of animals. No, we are also talking of plants, especially for indicator species. These species interact in so many different ways. Yeah, ways that are at times beyond us as human beings to know. We still don't know. So if you're not careful and whatever activity you're doing is impacting on one species, just know that you are actually impacting the entire species. Let's look at the place principle. And on this, I think I'm not going to take a lot of time, but there are some things I want to highlight. We know that in local areas, that area that you are in, and let's take it like that area of land where you want to do whatever it is you want to know. They are different. That area is different from other areas based on its climate, its hydrology, its soil, its geomorphology, the biotic interactions, all those things, the elevation, the longitude, the latitude, all those make that place unique or make that place different from the other places. And because it's different, that means even the rate of key ecosystem processes, such as primary production, decomposition, etc., are limited or are controlled or influenced by the particular the particular parameters that are found in that place, or the particular variables, being abiotic or biotic whatever is happening there. They control it, okay? And remember, it is different for every place. Now, there are some species that adapt to this kind of climate. Let me call it the land, the sort of setup. They have adapted there, that is where they thrive and that kind of thing. It is important to know that whatever the area is like. Let's take an example of the northeastern Kenya. It is a dry place. It has its ecosystems and everything that happens there, the animals, the both biotic and abiotic factors. Okay. When you're thinking of land use, put that in mind. Okay. And in most cases, to that environment, the climate, the weather, the biotic factors, the abiotic factors, try to put that land into a use that is compatible with what is there. If you don't do that, then you are going to be introducing uses that are going to be, in some cases, costly. It's like, for example, if you want to irrigate the dry areas, irrigation is a good thing, yes. You are going to get food, yes, but it is going to cost you. Not only economically, but also ecologically. Okay. Ecologically, because if you irrigate a very dry area, that area, the salinization goes up. Okay, the salts which are down there tend to come up to the surface. The soil becomes salinized, and it even becomes even more difficult to use. So whatever use that you're going to put into that land, and I think when we looked at land use, land suitability classes and land classification, all those, I think we mentioned that put that land into a use that will be sustainable and that will be at par with that, with the climate, both biotic and abiotic. So that's with the place principle. Let's look at the disturbance principle, which is the fourth principle. And this one is interesting. And it reminds me of something that has happened very, very recently. Now, under the disturbance principle, the type, intensity, and duration of a disturbance shapes the characteristics of populations, communities, and ecosystems. So what are disturbances? These are events that disrupt ecological systems. They may occur naturally, e.g. a wildfire, storms, or floods, or they may be induced by human action, such as clearing for agriculture, cutting the forest, building roads, altering stream channels, which we are very good at. Okay, so the effects of disturbances are controlled in large part by their intensity. How intense are those disturbances that you have put? It could be a small disturbance, maybe the intensity is not so high. But if it's a huge disturbance, then it is going to be a problem. Just a minute. Yeah, so putting that in mind, think about what disturbance. Remember, we said in most cases, if you have to leave a place, of course, there's going to be some disturbance. How long are you going to disturb that place? How frequently are you going to do it? When are you going to do it? Is it during the hot weather, the dry season, the rainy season? When are those disturbances taking place? and what's the size and shape of the area affected. So we know that disturbances affect both above and below ground processes. They can impact communities, they can impact all this. Now, land use changes that alter natural disturbance regimes or initiatives, or initiate new disturbances are likely to cause change in species, abundance, distribution, community composition, and etc., etc. Now, this is it. Land managers and planners should be aware of the prevalence of disturbances in nature. Disturbances that are both intense and infrequent, such as hurricanes. Remember, these disturbances that are intense and infrequent, such as a hurricane that happens every 100 years. Yeah? So 100 years, in the lifetime of a human being, probably they'll only see that flood once, and maybe never, some will never see it. But there is that periodic disturbance, or even an earthquake, or whatever it is. Yeah. If you as a land planner are not aware of that, then you're in problem. Another thing, if you as a land planner are not aware that indeed there has been this, then you're in problems. Some of the things that we are right now, even most currently.
Somatic hybridization.
Sorry. Yeah, some of the disturbances that we are experiencing right now, not necessarily in our country, but in other countries, there's a reason. So I was trying to put up something for us to watch. And I thought this was so timely for this. I want us to look at what has happened in Germany. I'm sure, I'm hoping, let me not say I'm sure, I'm hoping that we have been following what is happening in the world. And especially when anything ecological, just be very careful. Listen and learn as much as possible what is happening. Why is it happening? And that kind of thing. So for the last few days, there has been floods. There have been floods in Germany. There have been floods in Iran. There has been floods in Europe. There have been floods in America. Especially want to talk about the floods in Germany. They say that the last time there were such floods was in 1916. So we are in the year 2021. That's over 100 years ago. Okay. I remember, and I think I shared with you this, when the German Chancellor, Angela Merkel, went to visit those sites, she just said, like, this is surreal. I mean, it's like, this is not happening. This is only possible in a dream. She cannot remember in her lifetime experiencing something of the sort. So let's go ahead and watch
It's a natural disaster on a shocking scale, with heavy rain causing rivers to burst their banks, whole streets ripped away by the floodwaters, houses collapsed, livelihoods destroyed. More than 160 people have lost their lives.
At least we're alive. There are so many dead. It's unbelievable. You can't begin to imagine what happened here.
Such freak weather events are unusual in Germany. But despite the shock, communities are coming together, united in their efforts to tackle the disaster. The Mies family have never known anything like it. They've spent days in the mud trying to salvage what they can from the ground floor and cellar of their house in the town of Walporzheim. The property has been devastated by flooding from the Ahr. Normally a small river, it was turned into a raging torrent by days of heavy rain. It destroyed everything in its path.
If it rains heavily in autumn or there's meltwater, it can get a bit wild. The river rises very quickly, then drops right back down again. But what's just happened is inconceivable. We were spared. It did rain, but that was all. It didn't come into people's houses.
Was badly hit, and
if you want to line, make sure you stand out. Go to Wix e-commerce and create a professional online store that will grab shoppers' attention. Build a state-of-the-art storefront and make
things were just as grave in the village of Schuld, also on the Ahr. An aerial view shows the scale of the devastation. The river coils right around the village. On the night the rains came, it tightened like a noose around this community of 660 people. Houses washed away, cars scattered like toys, mud and wreckage everywhere. Now residents try to deal with the damage to their homes and businesses. The mood is edgy.
If you don't have disaster insurance, then you've had it. It'll all just have to come down, and that's that.
Not everyone is being allowed back into their houses. Those who are often find themselves in shock. Now they must start to deal with the aftermath of the flooding. This was a car. There's dejection, but also anger. Anger at the politicians who rushed to the areas hit by the flooding. Emotions are running high.
If they're bringing shovels and buckets and brooms with them to help, that's okay. But if they've just come to gawk, then they should stay away.
It's a dilemma for Chancellor Angela Merkel and the other politicians who visited the disaster zones. They know that electioneering will not go down well with people who've been struck by devastation. They also don't want to get in the way of emergency services. But if they stay away, people will say they're too fancy to get their hands dirty. At the end of the day, political leaders have to show their faces in the affected areas to offer both help and encouragement.
The federal and state governments are right behind you. We'll work together to put things right in this beautiful region.
Authorities are promising to make hundreds of millions of euros available, with affected families getting an initial payment of €3,500. That money is badly needed in Walporzheim. A few days on from our first visit, and the clean-up operation is going well. Clean water is rinsing away the dirt.
Okay, let's come back to class. Let's come back from Germany to class. I don't know whether there is. I wanted you to watch that video. There is something I wanted you to notice. Where have those people built? Does anybody want to respond to that? What is next? I wanted you to look into whatever. Where is that town built or village? Anybody wants to have a go?
On a floodplain.
Yes. On a floodplain. The river is not far. It is right there. Okay, so that means that was part originally, probably that was part. Maybe even, I think there's something that happened in Germany where they sort of reach the Rhine River. You know, I don't know whether you, okay, we didn't, we didn't do the human geography where you looked at the Rhine River. The Rhine Valley, actually, it even connects all the way to the Netherlands, I think, and Luxembourg. And what happened, I think, the course of the river was changed, something that happens many, many years back. And of course, it was forgotten, and the place was reclaimed, and people built there, people lived there, and that kind of thing. So that devastation that we have seen with the river, you can even see the original river is just like a small thing. But these are periodic things that probably nobody thought about. You say, oh, it's been 50 years, nothing has happened. It has been 80 years, nothing happened. It's been 90 years, nothing has happened. It is true. One day, nature will return. And I'm trying to think even about the real estate business in that area, that probably in the future, that probably not very many people will want to live there. Or maybe they may entirely change the architecture of that place so that it is able to withstand such shocks. Because, I mean, this is a shock. Imagine that is your property, that's your home. And you know, for most Europeans or white people, they're not like Africans where you have a house in the city, uko na ushago kwenu, kikiumana unaenda huko. For them, that is their home, that is their everything. There is nowhere else to go. So it was quite devastating, I think. And for most of them, they don't even have words to describe what they were seeing. So they're not sure whether to be angry. They're not sure what to do. And of course, you blame many people, but it's the same thing. As something happens, the ecology of the area is not looked into, and wow, lo and behold, something happens. And it causes so much pain, so much loss. And I think it's very, very difficult. Even when you want to comfort attempts, it's so difficult. Comforting me, and my home is in ruins. It becomes very, very difficult. If that person doesn't even know where they're going to spend the night when the house is like that. So yeah, so for me, I think that is an eye-opener. For us moving forward, we have such areas in Kenya. We've got places where we've reclaimed wetlands and we've built houses and we said, oh, everything is okay. Yeah, and let me say for this even, the fact that, because the same thing actually has happened in China. It's only that we are not going to look at China, but China has also suffered floods. And one thing that's being linked to this is climate change also. It's making extreme events more regular and even worse, more extreme than they were before. So climate change now totally complicates things. And so when we are even having to think about land use, we cannot think about land use without seriously thinking about climate change and what the impacts of climate change are going to be on land use. Okay, the last principle that I'm just going to rush over is the landscape principle. And this just looks at the size, the shape, the spatial relationship of land cover types, etc. And we know this is where we bring in the issue of habitat fragmentation. The land, the kind of, for example, if you're talking about a rangeland or a forest, how intact is that forest? Well, I know one of the things that the current we had the Aichi targets for biodiversity, and they were expiring in 2020. So we are getting ready for the next set of Aichi, for the next set of biodiversity aspects. And one thing that is key in this is that they are looking, one of the indicators is the intactness of sorry about that. just about finished. The intactness of an ecosystem. So they're looking at how fragmented an ecosystem is, how continuous it is, because fragmentation has its own problems. And what has happened, of course, with human beings getting into ecosystems and doing all sorts of things, what we have just managed to do is to continue reducing the patches. Instead of the big habitat patches that we had, now we have a lot of fragmentation. And that is going to affect the species, both plant and animal species. And of course, unfortunately, the cause of this fragmentation is, in most cases, is human habitation. So you're going to get the middle of a forest that was once continuous, and of course that changes the game. We've looked at that in animal human wildlife conflict. And so moving forward, because I don't think I want to dwell much on that. You already have this, you've already done this. And of course, there's a lot of noise in my background. I was bringing up this topic as the last topic for just to wrap up everything that we've been looking at on land use planning. Just looking at the ecological part of it and say it is something that cannot be left out. It has to be considered at every point. We've looked at the principles that we have to think through whenever we are thinking of land use. Is this a good area for people to settle? Yes. Okay, fine. Why is it good? What are the risks? What are the threats? Okay. How can we avert the risks? Or is the risk too high that we should just say nobody should settle here? We should use this place for this particular use because the risks are big and it is not just worth it. Or are there no risk? Is it a place people can settle? And that kind of thing. And of course, you've said, put climate change into the picture. So I'm thinking I want to stop there. And I think that's a good wrap up of what you've been doing for the last 10 weeks. And food for thought for most of us. And let's see, how do we move on? How do we move forward as people who want to be transformed by the knowledge that we have gained, but also to go and transform others, to use the same knowledge to transform others? What are we going to apply out there in whatever it is that we are going to participate in the future? Are we gaining the right knowledge to help this country to move from where it is into something more interesting? So I think I'm going to stop there. I want to ask you, can we meet at 12 for about 30 minutes for me to wrap up SMR 14, just to wrap it up for 30 minutes and then we'll be done. Is that okay? I'm asking you guys, you need to answer me.
We have a class at that time.
Okay. So shall we meet at our usual? What time do we meet? You have a class the whole day?
With Dr. Tambo, not the whole day, but I don't know.
What time? What time is the class?
Sanane.
If the class is at 2, I just want half an hour from 12 to 12:30. Not much more time. So is that okay? No? Okay, no problem. Very important to note I need the third card. When is the deadline?
Today.
Yeah, send me my card. Send it to me today. No excuses. Finish up your work. Send it. No excuses. I don't want to whatever listen to excuses. When are you coming back to prepare for exams?
August.
So when you come, I think say we are going to do now our Cat 2. You know, those subjects, we're just going to do them in a day. So keep reading, keep getting ready for Cat 2. So I think for me, it's goodbye for now. Thank you very much. I hope you have enjoyed your lectures, online lectures. I know there are so many challenges, but I think I have enjoyed teaching. Can I hear from one or two of you? How has it been like? Okay. Sorry, say, just go ahead and say. Okay, thank you, Peter. Anybody else who wants to make a contribution? How they think about the lectures? Even say how you think we could improve them.
The online thing has been good, but it has had hiccups on the way. Some of us, we experience network errors. We come from an area that has a network hitch, but we are getting to adapt. When you see somebody leaving, somebody coming, we are getting to adapt to this new normal, but it's too bad we are adapting in the last semester.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. Yeah, but I think well, still something, and yeah, I still think it's a good experience despite the network challenges. Anybody else who wants to think to say something about the lectures, the online lectures? Okay, let be said.
Yes, madam.
Hey, tell us what you feel on the lectures, the online lectures.
Oh, the online lectures have been somehow tricky, basing that we are at home and we got a lot of distractions, maybe from network problems, and maybe from our parents. So I think it was a challenge to us. And bearing in mind that it was the first time that we are shifting from face-to-face to online, it was kind of hard for us to adapt. So it was a challenge for me.
Okay, thank you, Seth. You should have just told your parents you are in class. Wasikusumbue, wache ufanye kazi yako. But yeah, it is a challenge, but I think it also brings in new opportunities. Actually, we have to adapt. We have to adapt. We've just got to keep up with the times. I don't think we don't have an option. We just have to make it work. And I think it is going to work. So at times when you face challenges, okay, Fabian, I never get him. I don't know where he disappears to. Okay, Mwandikwa Muthengi.
Yes.
Go ahead, tell us, what's your take on the online lectures?
It has just been wow. You've got time to interact with the online slides, like with the videos, especially the videos. I've really enjoyed watching from the videos, and I've learned a lot. Despite the challenges, it has been a good experience. So I hope to continue being online and learning from these online platforms. But more so, I want to thank you. That is for the first time, but I've really enjoyed from learning from you.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Wandikwa. Thank you. I think I've also really enjoyed teaching online because I did not feel limited as to the content I can bring in, and I was just always so excited to go online and just say, yeah, I think my students should watch this video. I think they can learn something from this video, as opposed to face-to-face. We have to think about a projector and so many other things. So I think to me, this has played to my advantage. Yeah, of course, with disturbances here and there. But I think I just wanted to open that frontier of learning for you so that you can see it and you people can appreciate there's a lot of knowledge out there that you can spend your time doing a lot of useful things, learning, getting ideas. Some of these ideas may just end up transforming your life and the life of others. Thank you. Let's hear from Esther Monzala. Esther?
Yes, madam.
Your turn.
Okay. Well, for me, the online classes have been convenient in terms of you can attend class from anywhere, but there's a challenge of the network sometimes. And it's quite interactive more than the physical one. I think also I could tell that you are enjoying teaching us online. So it was a nice experience. It was new, but it was nice. Thank you.
Thank you, Esther. Yeah, indeed, I enjoyed teaching. I always looked forward to the classes. Okay, Nyamoita, tuambie.